welcome everyone. It's a great pleasure to have you here and to do this with you. One thing I want to say that first of all, I want to thank Mushai for being one of the initiator of this conversation, because we were talking about it and he said, why don't we do this? And it came to mind of coming together in a panel and having a conversation with people that I respect, and I want to see their perspective, and I want to explore what's going on even from their perspective. Now, we are here very different people from different places. So let me start by introducing briefly each one of you so that everybody knows who's on the call. So let me start by Dr. Panos Lazanas, and we go back more than 20 years. With most of you, we go back more than 20 years, and an engineer and much more. And it would be too long to say everything, but a great friend and a great discussions with the man. So, and then we have Mushai, which is also go back more than 20 years, and we have been working together. We have been discussing together and sharing opinion, and I've really enjoyed the perspective that is totally different than mine sometimes. So it's really enjoyable. Then I just met Lincoln, which I welcome gladly in this conversation, because he is the CEO of the Center of Support for the psychological side, basically for whatever happens to people in relationship to what's going on around them, which for this moment, I think is actually a great support. And I welcome you. I don't know you well, but I hope I will get to know you better as we go. Now, Andre Coetzee is a great trainer and coach. I believe I would say is an inspiration to me in life, and I think is an inspiration to many. So I think I'm not far to say that I am not only pleased, but I'm looking forward to see and hear the perspective that you bring to the plate, because it adds something always to mine. And then for last, obviously, one of my first mentors, which is J.R. Young. I mean, don't blame him for what I am right now, but he has been part of my growth, and we go back even more than 30 years. So, I think here I have like the cream and people that I really respect. And the conversation is going to be about what's going on. The sense of this conversation to me is that we are from different places: Kenya, Greece, and South Africa, and United States, and we all see what's going on. We all have seen the 2 years unfold in front of our eyes, and we all have an opinion. We all have our thoughts and our reasoning. And I would like, first of all, to give you space to share, and even if you want to engage with one another, to explore a little bit, and then I think we can go from there. So I like for it to start right away without any further ado. So I'd like for any of you to just, what do you see from there? Where are we from where you are? What do you see?
I see out the window. It's a very interesting. I'm just jumping in, and okay. When you say, what do you see? First of all, you are evoking a visual response. Oh, I see stuff. So I'm going to take a perspective right from the start to say, well, I'm going to close my eyes and tell you what I see. So I'm not going to look with my physical eyes. I'm going to see, what I perceive as my inner experience, in that sense, seeing, okay? And obviously, again, because of my background, I suppose, if my eyes are closed and my mind isn't particularly noisy, it becomes almost impossible to find boundaries. In other words, as I'm supposed to be sitting here with my eyes closed, so I don't have visual feedback as this is a hand, for example. There's a spaciousness in which I am in, and in that spaciousness, it's not quite darkness because there's light in front of me and all around. So it's a kind of a weird twilight zone, actually. Ideas arise and disappear. And seeing that we are together as we are, and I'm assuming there's an assumption that your request is, what do we see happening in the world, and particularly with respect to COVID and all the other stuff? The stuff that arises in me is a general feeling of sadness, because in my environment, one of the common elements that I'm exposed to is division. People are becoming polarized, and in my opinion, from my point of view, irrationally so. So I'm going to start off by saying that my experience of the moment is it's got a sadness about it. Oh, look what's happening. What is going on? So that's my opening statement. I will say a lot more as we go along, but for starters, I'm starting with my inner being, seeing rather than what I see in the street.
Wow, thank you. Can I jump in here? Because you triggered something in my mind, and I started seeing things that I was not seeing before. When you say that you closed your eyes and then you started using your inner eyes to see what is around you, and what came out is not a visual picture, is actually a feeling of sadness.
Yes.
That is very interesting to me. Now, what I see around myself, therefore, when I open my eyes, and that has been triggered because I kind of quickly went into my inner to try and see, to visualize. I couldn't see a feeling, but what I see around as a result is like an end to civilization. Is the world coming to an explosion? Are we just around the corner that it's gotta be the end of it because of all these challenges that people are experiencing? For the last several months, I've been talking to people who are only sharing what we call negative energy, negative feelings, negative actions, and that pulls people down to a situation where they feel completely unable to do what they need to do, either to solve their own personal problems or to solve other society or family or community challenges. But on another eye, I say, wow, maybe the deepening crisis around me, around the world, and what I see around in Nairobi and Kenya, maybe I see a crisis that is deepening, but which probably is going to rebuild or maybe experiencing some birthing pain, which will create or generate a different kind of society that probably we haven't seen before. That is what I see. I don't go into the feeling, I'm still on the visual. So that's what basically I see around me. Two perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not calling on anyone. I just let you go, guys.
Okay. It's interesting from Lincoln's perspective. Thanks for sharing that. But and it may just be related to my work and what I'm doing. I think, and last year when this thing started, we had conversations. We were all wondering about how things are going to change, the scale of change that's going to be there. But to me, what I see more is this: is it the hard parts to change, the things that are staying the same? That we have societal and structural or economic structural frameworks that are not moving. So it's just like Lincoln was talking about how much is going to change. I'm also seeing the things that are not moving. They're just like, they're stuck. And to some extent, despite all this disruption and the storm at the top, nobody wants to go any deeper and say, what does this storm mean? And what is it bringing out in me? We're just kind of like, okay, let's let the storm pass. So the iceberg at the top maybe wears off a bit, but what's down there is, though it's being in my mind, it's called to question. I'm struggling to find people who are like, let's talk about this thing. This is the time to talk about it. but maybe it's too painful or difficult to get to at this time of such disruption. So the things that stay the same are the ones that shock me at the moment. Or is it surprise me? Yeah, they're not changing. Yeah.
Can you give an example, Muhai? When you say the things that don't change, for instance, what do you mean?
So let me give you, okay, the first basic one from say work is our Kenyan economy, where we are in our economy. And the economic plan and plans of the government, what are they trying to do? They are still doing the same thing. You know, to a large extent, they're not saying, this thing caught us, we didn't have enough hospital beds, we didn't have enough oxygen. Does that mean we need to refocus all our energies to different things? No, we're just going to do whatever we used to spend money on, we just keep spending. A little bit more for COVID, but not much more. And then the other area of interest for me is like even spirituality, theology, and that kind of thing. You still find people are still, this is not changing their belief structures. They're not asking those questions. They don't want to ask those questions. Like, where did this come from? Where are people dying? So it's like, yeah, we still stick to the old road somehow, not going to anything new. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I see Hendre's here, and he's from Southern California, and I'm up in Northern California above San Francisco. And I'll be interested to see what he has to say. But our country, I don't know how much you're aware of it, but the nation is in turmoil, really. An open border in the south, and they estimate 200,000 people a day, maybe, coming into the US from all over the world. From Africa, the latest group is from Haiti. And it apparently is a plan that the present government has, which is to allow as many people in as possible. They estimate maybe 2 million people this year will come in to the country.
Wow.
And the idea is that then these new citizens will vote for the party that's in power now. And but the thing is, they're telling us, the citizens of the US, they're telling us that we have to get vaccinated for COVID, which is fine. I'm vaccinated, not a problem. Now they're mandating that everybody does this and mandating that you wear your mask and so on and so forth. And at the same time, literally thousands of people coming into the country, no vaccination. They probably have COVID, no regulations, no anything. So it's a crazy time for us, crazy.
Okay.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know. Hendre's in Southern California. He's closer to the border. I don't know how he sees it. But,
Yeah. Well, thanks, JR. I agree with you. I think it's 200,000 people a month or more. I think, but it is a significant influx of people. I think that certainly that's one difficulty, and I concur with JR. What could be behind this all? In addition to our immigration situation, I would say in working with global companies and the people I work with, I think we're in an environment of extreme paradox, and the paradox is being highlighted in many ways. Division, as you said, Panos, is one of the paradoxes there. I think the idea of the haves and the have-nots, the vaccinated, the non-vaccinated, the people who are fearful, non-fearful. I think it's a normal human being response that people in times of uncertainty gravitate to what they know, even if they gravitate to the battles that they know. They keep fighting the same fight because it's easier to fight this fight than it is to fight this unknown one. Right. So and so people double down, fighting harder, disagreeing harder as a way to avoid the bigger uncertainty. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that in my experience, I think we're all familiar with the hero's journey. Everybody's trying to do the hero's journey. Let's get through the dark side, come back, or through the abyss, come back up. But the Greeks have an interesting frame around this journey. They don't have the same you come back. They have the katabasis, which is the going down into the abyss, if you would. Yeah. And then they have a new at the bottom of the abyss. There's the anabasis, and the anabasis is not a return to where you were. It is the start of a new journey. Yes. And I think, to me, this is the frame that I'm adopting and I'm inviting people into, is at the bottom of the abyss is not the start of going back to where you were. At the bottom of the abyss is the start of a new journey. And this requires us to have new thinking. It requires us to have, and to some degree, it feels like, like you're talking about the politicians or what they're doing in government. Even the politicians are trying to do what they've always done, right? Yeah. This battle that's raging in America, the polarization, it's as old as the mountains. It's as old as, at least, from what I can tell, at least the last 50 years, it's been there, right? I mean, I think perhaps pre-Second World War, there may have been a different experience, or pre the Great Depression or whatever, but it has been polarized between two parties. And the politicians are trying to do the same thing. I do think on a metaphysical, spiritual, global, I see the UFO behind you, Panos, level, we might be at a portal, right? We might be at the beginning of something different. And to me, it's like we're at the gate of something, of a new door, or a new dawn, if you would, and everybody's fighting outside the gate. And, some people won't make it through the gate, not because the gate is bad, but because the fight before the gate is bad. And so, if we can, and I honestly can't tell you that's what's on the other side of the gate is better than what we have now. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know. And so, is it a new world order? Is it new possibility? Is it do they finally get to the globalization that they're trying to push us into? Who knows? But I think we're in a high degree of uncertainty, and the natural thing that people do is they push towards what they know, even if that is destructive.
Yeah, and that's pretty powerful, I think, and I think fighting the battle that is most familiar. But now there's nothing familiar in what's going on, and actually, even in my context, that I've always cherished for the doubt, for the reasoning around things. Now that seems to be kind of rebellious to do. So I think it's a moment of things are changing. We try to resist by doing what we've always done, and now what? So what do we do now? So in the sense, it's kind of a liminal space, if you would. I don't know if you know the term. The liminal space is like when what has been up until now is no longer, and not yet we have been given new rules to play by. And so we are in this liminal space, and everybody's responding or reacting the way they can, and mostly in fear, at least, mostly in fear and anger, because that's a very powerful combination, because fear and anger becomes what the problem is. We were talking with Lincoln, and we were saying that that sometimes the fear, the psychological aspect of this situation may be more dangerous for the human being than the virus itself, because that really affects the way we live. I remember at the beginning we were talking about the new normal. Now nobody's using that word anymore, because who knows what is it? What is that? And so what do we do now? So from your perspective, given that we're all surrounded by people that are living in their apocalypse in their mind, they're living the last day, what can we do in these? What do you do? Let me put it that way. What do you do around these people, and how is that for you? Are they pulling you down, or did you find a way to bring some light to the conversation?
I'd like to pick up on what Henry said about the katavasi and the anavasi.
I knew that. You're a Greek man. Who else could have done that? Yeah, that's okay.
What is really important about that, and I just want to expand that little in-between point. Traditionally, what they would do is they would put a person inside. Okay, they would be fasting and preparation and so many things, but eventually they would end up in the ground, in an underground, like a kind of like a labyrinth, you can say, of many levels. It wouldn't be too deep, and it was possible to lift, let's say, a few stones and pull the person out. But during this process of initiation, if you want to call it, the person concerned would have to face their biggest fear. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine being underground in this little tunnel that you can hardly squeeze through, right? And you have to get through, and there's no going back. And you might be there for, I can't remember, this is a while since but let's say you were there for 3 days, for argument's sake. No water, no food, in the total darkness, in this constricted space. It can really mess up your head, right? The idea was that if a person would come out the other way, they would have left behind, and I'm summarizing, and Henry, we can discuss this further if you want. They would somehow go through their biggest fear. Now, if for some reason they couldn't, and if they started completely freaking out, they would open the stone, the structure, pull them out, okay, no problems, go home. But those few who'd go through, theoretically, and because there's a lot of caveats, right, they would be considered suitable for leadership. So I want to pause on this point, because, and everybody's mentioned it, I'm just amplifying it. I'm saying, aha, whatever fears come up, right, because of the circumstances, because of the uncertainty, and it's really profound, eh? There's financial uncertainty, political, what's his name? One of the theories is a comet is coming. It's like COVID. I mean, there's so many things. There's nothing that one can say, okay, now I know where I am. So I'm suggesting, therefore, it might be worthwhile, I don't know now or some other time even, to consider this. What is it that is a person's deepest fear? Now, I'm just going to end up this little bit by saying, here's my response. Okay, I'm just sharing it as a conversation piece, and we can explore, right? So if I'm sitting again, I'm taking the position of eyes closed because it's a different dimension, actually. If I'm sitting with my eyes closed and my mind is telling me, this is happening, that bastard, he told me this, and I must tell him that, and I must find him thing to... If I find myself in that kind of soup, my go-to strategy is I just pause for a second and remind myself that I haven't got a clue, and neither does a living human being on the planet now or ever can answer the question, what is this? What is this? The substance of this, not that this is a hand, it's a hand, of course, but what is it? What is it made of? And this is for me a very serious question, and something that is familiar to me. So this is not a sudden understanding. I've been doing this for many years. So because what that does, immediately my thinking, noisy mind goes, well, I don't know, boop, and it keeps quiet. So as that happens, immediately all the pressure, the tension, the sadness that I spoke of earlier starts to loosen up, because I'm not feeding it anymore through further thinking. And then a little while later, a few minutes perhaps, being in this, wow, I really have no idea what this is. Then comes the second question. not necessarily a verbal question, but an inquiry. My goodness, not only do I not know what this is, what the hell is aware of this? Now, having been through this cycle many times, right? What happens? I'm describing it in words now, which is not really, we can try if you want, but anyway. What happens is something flips over. And the individual that I regard myself to be, me talking to you now, is me talking, right? That thing flips around and becomes an object. And it's a very peculiar thing, very difficult to put into words. A lot of people have tried this in poetry, in philosophy perhaps, in other ancient traditions, in mystical religion, not church and all that. This moment of the thing that thinks flipping over from being the subject to becoming the object, I'm going to be a little bit bold here. I'm going to step right off the line and say, for me, this is what salvation really means. Salvation from myself. And therefore, in summary, to pick on what Andre said and what I started off saying earlier, this situation is a continuous, unrelenting opportunity for me to fall back. And because of my little habit, as I described it, I have the good fortune, I suppose, to consider the idea of death. And I don't mean morbid, oh, I'm going to die, all the kind of nonsense, because this is just thought. An experiential version of what I'm saying. And again, we can explore all this. I can share some further experiences and so on. The point is, for me, this is the benefit. There's so much uncertainty. One more thing I want to say. I have the luxury of living alone. So I'm not dragged outside by a partner or kids, or I've been through all of that, done and dusted. But so I live alone, so I have a lot of time to myself, so I can close my eyes and nobody's bothering me. So in that respect, it's unusual. But this katavasis and going through that fear brings forth a different version of person, such that the ego self is no longer the primary driver. It's now an object, and therefore subject to adjustments. And there my hope lies of something evolving or developing that may be of value. I hope.
Yeah, clear.
Yeah, okay.
Musha, you wanted to say something to that, or I saw you before trying to say
something.
Yeah,
no, I was, that was very interesting, Panos, but I was kind of on a slightly different line. And I can kind of put a line to what Panos is saying, because Panos is talking about even the opportunity or the similarity to life in general. If it's a habit you've picked up, it's the same. It's just maybe different waters. And I was remembering from what Andre said, there was a quote we were just talking about it last week about, I think it's by Heraclitus. Nobody ever crosses the same river twice.
Same river twice, yeah.
Yeah. For it is not the same river, and they are not the same person when they're crossing it. So, Davide, you're talking about the fear. I think there's the other side, and I'm thinking that's when we talk about even the division and what is causing some of this, is that for some people, you have to remember this situation is also exciting. It is new, it's opportunity. If what Andrew was talking about, a door, they're kind of like, let's get through that door, because they are keen to move forward. And I was just thinking, like, imagining BioNTech, they're called the BioNTech guys. You know, they've been working on this mRNA things forever, and the Moderna guys, and they had a little bit of work in cancer treatment and a couple of things. But you can imagine for them, it's like, whoa, we've got this thing now. We can do billions of doses. I mean, for them, they've been pumping, building new factories and all that. So it's been really exciting for them. I can imagine, it's a new time, new opportunities, good stuff is happening for them. So, and I think then they meet the people who are concerned, who are very worried about what is going on. and perhaps also who haven't, for whatever reason, like Panos has said, through that initiation period, who haven't faced their fears. They haven't been taken through the process so that they can engage constructively. And so then you get this, and also the excited guys, not that they've ever faced their fears or whatever, but they're just kind of like, we're all these excited people and so on. And then I think the other thing is that now we just know too much. If you think about the last pandemic in 1918, you know, my grandparents back here, my grandmother, I think, survived that, and she was famous in her family. They actually gave her a name for surviving some of those plagues and famines in those days. And but they had no clue where this thing came from. You know, I don't think they knew it was the Spanish flu. You know, it was just like, it was just going around the world. They didn't know. Now we kind of know there is a new variant of concern. It takes, you know, 30 minutes and the whole world knows there's a variant of concern. And I think also partly we are not prepared for so much knowledge, either culturally, I would say even biologically. There's just too much information being thrown at us, and we don't know what to do with it. And that can also be paralyzing in itself. Just too much happening, and we don't know how to process it. And then we revert to, like Andre says, we revert to old battles, because there we know what to do. That place of confusion is too uncomfortable, or the liminal space, as you said, Davide. Nobody likes the liminal space. It's because, well, not many people don't like the liminal space. You have to train yourself maybe to be prepared for a changing thing and to hear and go into new things. But that in itself is a cause of the division and the strife. Just that it fuels it because of the arena you're in. You know, you're just kind of in an arena which is encouraging you to fight rather than to talk and make peace.
Yes, and that's really the opposite of what's useful in the situation. Because see, to me, the liminal space is a space in which you have to govern yourself, because you don't have any parameters outside of you that tell you should do this. Actually, there are too many that tell you should do this, and so you get confused trying to follow the right voice. And what I love about the liminal space is that people are called to stand on their responsibility. Now, the response we give to that call varies, because I see a lot of people that are, you know, really looking for a savior, somebody to tell them what to do so that they can go back to their own life. And this is actually what makes them see what they want to see and avoid to see what they don't want to see, because otherwise they would have to review their view and no security is there and back to the fear. So the point here is, at least in my understanding, is that the liminal space is bringing all of us to in front of our hole, like, you know, the thing on the ground. Everybody is in front of, well, you see, Andrew, you were talking about the gate. I might say we're in front of the hole, and on the other side of the hole there's the gate, you know, and so you go through your biggest fear to be able to enter in this new opportunity. And so I was thinking about, you know, how do you go through your biggest fear? And that's a very interesting thought for me, because I love challenge. But, you know, what you were saying before Panos' death, you know, that's really what it's all about. If you think about from the beginning, we're talking about life or death. And so that's we're all in front of our death. And so to be able to go through that and be able to go through the gate and start a new life, I think we have to be willing to face that. Because if you're afraid of facing that, you might face it anyway. Well, you do face it anyway, but at the end of the day, you're not going to go through the gate, and you're going to stop in front of it fighting with somebody about should we go or shouldn't we go, you know, kind of thing. And so to me, that's kind of a very interesting. Anthropologically, this moment is huge, because you see there's a clear division in the attitude of people. Some are rigid, some get more doubtful, and the doubt creates a little bit of instability or, you know, anxiety, and there's this confusion in which we have to. It's not about information to me; it's about orientation. What is your compass? Now you're going to discover your own compass, and because there's nothing else. And so what is your own compass? What does that say to you? And now, are you willing to listen to that? Or how much is going to cost you to listen to your compass? Or should I follow and then blame others because I made the wrong choice? So it's a beautiful moment because it's a passage, and we're all there since 2 years ago, and now people are rushing to want to go back to something normal and trying to get out of this. But I don't think the tunnel is over. I mean, sorry, I don't know, you might guys think something else, but the tunnel, if it is 3 days, we might be at the second day, at least in my interpretation. So the fear is not over. We have to still go through it. And I think, if we want to run back, there is no way back. It's like a birth, how can you send the kid back up, And that's really what I feel about this in some ways in this moment. It's very fascinating, even though it's painful. Yeah, you wanted to say something, Andre?
Yes, the Panos and Musa, is it Musai? Mushai. Thank you so much for sharing so much richness in those words. Davide, you too. I'm kidding.
Thank you. I was starting to feel left over. Huh? Okay, I do this thing and nobody calls on me.
Davide, I have to play with you a little bit.
Go ahead.
The interesting thing is, I think, Panos, you're really onto something, the idea of moving from subject to object, or having something, being able to objectify this detachment that happens in there. If we take a look at probably the most famous katabasis that was ever there, which gives us our date today, right? September 24, 2021, speculative date, but date anyway, comes from Christ, right? Whether you believe in the theology or not, most people think about the tomb experience that Christ had, right? The 3 days, and the liminal space is the in-between, and the speculation of what happened between death and resurrection. But there is an additional liminal space to this story. And this is the space of Jesus showing up after these 3 days. And he showed up like a ghost. He didn't show up the way he was before. And then 40 days later, he goes up into the sky on a cloud, according to the story, right? And you can imagine the people who were close to him, the people who didn't like him killed him because they didn't want him to politically rule. The people who followed him wanted him to come back, and then he left. He came back, but he left again, and he left in the weirdest way. Nothing was the same. And I imagine for these people who were around, it must have been so impactful that nothing that they thought they were going to get back what they had before, and then it left again. And it was this consistent shift of how to relate and how to operate, and so I think, I imagine subject, object, what a confusing time it must have been. And yet the impact of that event and the stories around that changed the way we tell time today, right? One man and many, I think many liminal spaces, not just the death of Christ, but also the change of how people around him operated and how governments operated and what happened and all of these things. And I think that, like you said, Davide, we're not through the tunnel. It may be that we go through many tunnels in this time. It may be that from this point forward, we change the way we tell time, and we do the dates. And there's lots of things that can shift in this process. But I do think this, a way in the middle of this is the idea of subject-object. Where's my identity? And then shifting that into then participating in a responsible way. Part of the challenge is people can use this idea that I am in the tunnel or I'm in the liminal space, therefore I will do nothing. And that I think is also dangerous, because if you stay in the tunnel and you don't move forward towards the gate, you will die in the tunnel. There is something to do. And the question for all of us is, what do I do in the tunnel? And that's not a question that any of us can answer for anybody else, because the tunnel ultimately provides us the one great opportunity and the one great fear. Who am I when I am alone? And who do I choose to be? And I think this is very philosophical conversation, but ultimately, when I'm doing my work with companies, this is the same thing that I do with them. We go from subject, how have we been up until now? What's the object? Who do we want to be from here on out? What's our responsibility? And to take action to design from the future back, even if the future is uncertain.
Wow, can I? Interesting.
Sure, please.
Wow, very, very interesting stuff going on here. And my take from what Davide and Cortez and Lazanas, I like the idea that you are able to think because you're alone or something. Because what I've seen, and I like the liminal stage, I like that gate stuff because it's really very significant in trying to create possibilities for people. Now, what is very interesting is that when people are stuck at the mind level because of emotions of sadness, guilt, fear, love, and shame, which this situation we are in now, people are stuck. We are not able to think. Do not know what to do at that tunnel. I'm looking out at people who are at the gate to allow me, but that is not going to create solutions for people. Borrowing from what, maybe from my field and what I see with people, there is something very much related to probably what most of the panelists have talked about, which we refer to as post-traumatic growth. And sometimes you take a risk. I remember one time in a crisis, I think that was in Rwanda, when you were caught up by people who, I was in a group of people, these were perpetrators of the genocide. And on one side, there were the survivors. And I was supposed to find out how they can reconcile and peace. It can't happen when people are in pain. And in my risk-taking aspect of trusting the mind and the power of the mind of people, I just asked them, I mean, what is a positive outcome of the crisis that each of you has experienced, either as a perpetrator or as a survivor? And the kind of emotion that was in that room. Of course, I almost got into trouble by the politicians, but I think at that moment, the only tool I had is to ask people to process what they have endured so that they can take responsibility of their own feelings and their own thoughts and create a possibility of getting out of that situation. Now, this is very similar to what I see in this situation of rebuilding, rebirth. We got to experience the pain. There's no way of escaping that. Unfortunately, there are not too many people, and this kind of discussion is very interesting for me, who are trying to think, because we are overwhelmed, to try and capacitate or help people build their ability to see solutions to this crisis from their own perspective. Recently, I was looking at the pictures of people all over the world putting on masks. And I said, who taught people how to put on masks? It doesn't matter where you are from. Some could put them in a certain crazy way from nearly all corners of the world. And I said, how come people are able to do this to protect themselves, as they are told, from death in that cloth? And all over the world. It could be forced, it could be a choice. But for some reason, people are able to find things that will make them survive. And this is a globe, and this is the beauty of this global crisis. Nobody is going to escape it. Nobody is not, something will need to happen to the world. Something will need to happen to the way we think about the solutions, about the possibilities that the crisis will bring. And for me, the whole rebirth, the whole approach will require a significant mindset, a significant way of teaching people how to think, or even creating opportunities for people to think, because we are not able to think. Mushai said earlier, there's too much information. We are being bombarded. We do not have time to know. I have had people here in this country, fighting about, am I going to get vaccinated? Am I not? I said, what's the fight about? Is it possible to allow people to make choices that they feel are best for them, so that they can take responsibility of what will happen after they take that decision? So I see a very good opportunity in the world to try and find people and leaders who will get over the gate, maybe one or two, and probably they'll be able to pull a few more people to get over. When they talk about liminal stage, it kind of, sometimes people say you go back to what you used to work to see whether you are able to do or to solve current problems. And I remembered about, I'm Kikuyu. So Kikuyu traditional circumcision was a very painful experience. Very painful experience. They started bringing this anesthesia stuff for our boys to be circumcised very recently. You would experience pain for about a week or two. And Mushai, if he knows that, I'm a little on the older side, so I have a bit of that stuff. And I used to ask my grandfather, and I used to ask my father, you would be exposed to intensive physical, psychological, spiritual, let me use the word pain because it's been used here. But the moment they take you to the last point for you to enter the gate, as it were, that pain would never matter anymore. You would go through over. In fact, for me, from psychological perspective, now looking at it, I would probably refer to it as inoculation against pain, that you can be able to go through this and you'll make it, and things can only be better or different across the gate, to use that. No. But are we having this opportunity? Are there people in the world who are trying to, to give people the technology, the information to be able to get over through that time? So for me, I think that is what the world needs now. It doesn't matter where one is. I liked when Young said, there's too much movement of population from maybe poor countries to wealth-based countries. What does that mean? Is it just about voting? Or is there a possibility that there needs to be a change in the world in terms of society? What about the poor and the rich? What's rich, what's poor? What does that conversation lead us? Are we going to cross over the crisis with the same divisions, the same parameters? Questions that we need to respond to and to answer for those who are surviving, for those who are going to survive the crisis. But I know many of us are going to survive. I know people who have died clinically and they did not have the virus, but they believed they had it. They developed illness and they are buried. So that shows the power of the mind to resolve the problems, or to say, I've given it up. I can't get over the crisis. Thank you very much. Possibilities, and a serious mindset. Thank you.
Yeah. One thing I want to add to you, Lincoln, because there's an aspect that I'm going to try to convey, but is difficult to communicate. I believe what I can add to that, when I am facing something I don't like, or something I don't want, or something I'm afraid of, I think the only way, at least I found, to be effective in the process is to accept it. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that, because if I don't accept it, I'm going to resist to it. And if I'm resisting to whatever, I'm creating a tension between me and what's around me. Now, acceptance doesn't mean agreement, doesn't mean approval. Acceptance means to allow it to be as it is, and me relate to it, not try to avoid it, or not try to escape it, or not wish it wasn't there. So the point here is the more I can accept the situation, even if it's intolerable, the more I can deal with it, the more I become a leader in the process of crossing these gate and going into the new life. So the point is, I see the polarization as the real stuckness in some ways, because we are trying to understand why things are going on, and we think that if we know why, then we can accept what's going on. I think something like that happens when people die. We say, why did he die? But if you know why did the person died, still you're going to be suffering. So it's not the why. The why is not going to solve anything. And we're all looking for the why, but nobody is like, okay, this is it. What is it? I don't know, like Pano says, but this is it. And let me relax and accept what is. And from there, find a way to develop in whatever is going to happen from now on. So to me, acceptance in this context is something I didn't hear a lot about it, but I think whatever, even if we don't agree. Yeah, go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, I use particular language in introducing this concept to my clients from time to time, Davide. I think the question why is a reasonable question. It's just not a question that is going to work. So, it's valid, it's reasonable. However, it's not sustainable in the moment. So I ask my clients to suspend why. Let's suspend it, right? We can ask the question, but let's ask it later, because why often is best answered if we are on the other side and we look back. Then we can say, okay, well, now I understand why. So if I ask why in the moment, I'm still in the subjective. I haven't yet reached the objective. And so let's just suspend why, and then we'll ask it later. The interesting paradox that happens for people is in this moment of, and like you said, if I accept something, it doesn't mean that I agree with it, right? So some of the language, and again, it's nuanced, but I would say I ask people to embrace it. Like if I were to, like in the Matrix movie, dive into it, right? Rather than try to figure it out, dive into it. And in the middle of it, trust that you will find your way, trust that you will discover what's there. And I think, our challenge is that we want a cognitive understanding of something that that is perhaps greater than us or not revealed to us. And so, and I really like what Lincoln is saying, in this regard. And I have a question back to you, Lincoln, if you don't mind. I think I'm making an assumption, it's all men here on the panel, right? So all of us have, perhaps a little bit more bravado in saying, let's jump in, initiation, it's worth the pain, all of these things. I think women have a better understanding of pain thresholds when they do childbearing, and they understand it's 9 months, not 1 week or 2 weeks, right? But 9 months and then the birth and all of these things. And I think sometimes in a cognitive way, I have wanted people to embrace, and I've wanted people to go into the tunnel and then through the gate, and let's do this. And it's a more warrior mindset. And yet there is a need for comfort. There is a need to address people's fatigue, burnout, if you would. And my concern always is I don't want to comfort them so much that they stop or that they settle. But how do I comfort people and at the same time invite them into continuing the journey? How can I not eliminate their fear, but help them embrace their fear? Do you have, because this is your field, I'm assuming, do you have some thoughts around that? Of what are the things that we can do to offer some comfort, but not cause people to stop or, somehow, disable people by enabling their discomfort to become their subject, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you. It does make a lot of sense. And I think in your question, therein lies the answer. And it's also related to what Davide mentioned. When people come to us and they are in extreme pain, we try to help them explore what does the pain mean to them, what is it, and how do they experience it. And as you said correctly, I have seen a lot of ladies who will experience emotional pain at a very high intensity. For men, particularly in our part of the world, we will try not to experience emotional pain, but we somatize. We feel the pain in the body because of what you just said. We want to be there. We want to do things. Men can be more instrumental. So what happens is that, and I think this is what Davide said, we allow people that space to actually experience the pain they are feeling at whatever level, wherever they are feeling it. And that is what acceptance is all about. I have pain. I'm experiencing it here or here, wherever it is, because it's right about you, your body, mind, and spirit. When they are able to accept, and I've seen this, it's amazing, they actually release a lot of energy to be able to look at the possibilities of either minimizing the pain or changing the experience so that they can start experiencing something different. So acceptance is critical, but it's not easy. Sometimes people will go in and you can see they want to cry and they're just holding it all because sometimes it's very painful. Therefore, providing an opportunity and space, safety, for people to feel the pain and to accept it and to assure them that it will be okay. They will not collapse. I've seen people say, I do not want to experience it because I do not know what will happen after I let go of the pain or experience it. So we find that people are able to make that transition very quickly because nobody wants to be in pain. But it's a very decent position because if I let go of my pain, what will I hold on? So through that exploration, understanding, and then the action, people are able to cross over. And again, we go at your own pace. You cannot go at anyone's pace to accept, to experiencing at whatever level, and then look at it and see what it means to you. And that creates comfort without people getting stuck. Because I keep on saying the same energy, it's just rewiring it. What else can you do with it? And we have found that to be extremely helpful and extremely, opening up channels of unblocking people to try and look for other ways of either getting over the pain or embracing it and say, this is an experience I've had. What can I do with this experience? Maybe not from the feeling level, probably at the cognitive level, depending on how the person brings up their personal pain. Right now, I don't think there's a lot of space and time for people in the world to experience or to talk about the pain. That's why burnout is one of the greatest challenges we are having in organizations. People are being told to do things the way they were doing before. But I mean, like now we are talking here, I've realized that these Zoom meetings, which we are doing a lot, after 1 to 2 hours, people start experiencing cognitive dissonance. I would like to see you guys. I would like to talk to you when I'm seeing, of course I can see your pictures, but in my mind, I would like to be in the same room with you guys. It's very interesting, but it is not possible. How does my mind interpret that? I need to accept, given the situation we are in now, this is the best we can have a conversation. And actually it's very therapeutic. I feel very nice about this. Thank you. Does that?
No. Before I get to you, Panos, I just want to add something to the acceptance thing. It's like I'm thinking about a hook. When something is hooked, there's a hook. Okay. Now, when something is on the hook, to unhook the thing, you have to go deeper into what it is. Otherwise, it's not gonna get out. So I think that's really what acceptance does, is just get you deeper into what it is, just to get free to be able to get rid of it. I think that's pretty much what we're talking about when we talk about acceptance. It's just not like, like a passive thing that you just stay there and don't do anything about it. So Panos.
Can I add on that? Or is Panos? Panos goes first.
No, Mushai, you want to go?
Mushai,
I'll go after.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just saying, I think for me, the conflict as well is that we are also in a culture that does not want to deal with the pain. So, people talk about, pre-existing conditions and COVID. And one of them in the culture is that this whole journey of pain is not typical. It's not what we want to engage with. So, like, there was the book, I forget the author, I can see, The Coddling of the American Mind. They're talking about what's going on in American universities is that people have been kept too safe for too long. So he just talks about how kids, when he was a kid and they were 5, they'll just be told, go out and play. But now they're not allowed to go out without an adult, and the climbing, the jumping frame has to be protected and padded. And so everything has to be safe. And the culture has been telling us about being safe all the time and not going through any problems, which was the same thing we'd say about, which again, it's one of the battle lines around COVID, is that about people are going to die. And, the other side says, yeah, people die all the time. So this is normal. So there's a sense in which we close ourselves. We're looking for too much comfort. And so when even the situations like Lincoln and Andrew are talking about come up, people don't want to go into that place because it's just too, you're just not prepared for it. We've not gone through those cultural things. And the strength of the culture is so strong. Maybe later we'll talk about societal things and some ideas around that. But over to you, Pan.
I want to try and put together what was being said so far in the shape of a model, a little bit of neuroscience here. In other words, how does this blooming brain work, right? There is one model, there are others, but this is one. If this is a brain, it's pretty much the size of a brain. This is half a brain. This middle part here is called the limbic system. This is like the brain stem. This is the front of the brain, and all of these bits have various functions. So I'm going to give you a very simplistic version of this model. So if the emotional brain is triggered, something happens, boom, there's fear, for example, right? Immediately, in order to make sense of what's going on, in other words, to process this experience, some part of the associative brain kicks in. You get the feeling and the brain takes you, when I was, for example, I had an argument with somebody which disturbed me deeply. Next thing, I'm hallucinating what it was like when I was about, I can't remember, 2 years, 3 years old. I had to be put into hospital because some guy with a bicycle ran into me, broke my nose, and I was abandoned in the darkness, no parents, no safety, right? So suddenly this conversation now, my brain goes, this pain that I'm feeling, boom, and it goes and transports me, as it were, in a space when I'm feeling helpless like a 3-year-old. Now, what a lot of us haven't quite realized is that there's nothing, absolutely nothing that will focus the attention like suffering. It's like, if you really want to do meditation, try suffering. Because I don't know if you, and I mean, I'm joking, but at the same time, right? If you know anybody who's experienced proper clinical depression, you cannot distract them. Want to go to the movies? No. You want to be with the girls? No. You want to have a good meal? No. It's just one track mind. Now, I'm going to make a statement here. I hope it comes across properly. I believe that what we call pain, suffering, and so on, think about it. It has evolved, or if it is being created by God, whichever way you believe, I'm not going to argue, it's there. Now, if it evolved, it must have a purpose. And I'm suggesting the purpose of suffering, pain, call it what you like, is to focus the attention. To do what? Now, here comes the resolution. So the limbic system, the emotional brain gets triggered. The associative brain provides some video to make it happy. And these two get into a loop. And it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Anybody who's worked with people with post-traumatic disorders know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a feeling and there's the video and boom, boom, boom. To break this thing, to release, to create the energy release that Davide calls comes through acceptance. So acceptance from neuroscience, at least one version of it, goes like this. You have to engage, this is the front part of the brain, this is the back. You have to engage this part of the brain, the front part. How? by asking specific questions. So you feel hurt already. Lincoln mentioned it earlier. I'm amplifying what he's saying. You feel pain. Where do you feel it? Oh, I feel it in my chest. Oh, what is it like? It's like a fire. Oh, and what does this fire want to say? Oh, it wants to say this and that and the other. In that space, which again, Davide called the liminal space, I'm calling it a trance space, because the person is no longer looking with their physical eyes. They're seeing stuff, as it were, within. Amazing revelations happen. And so I'm summarizing the model as follows. Suffering focuses the mind. This COVID thing, by the way, has been an opportunity. And what I've seen is three possibilities. One, people are looking for comfort. Oh, I'm suffering. Someone must help me. So they're looking for relief. And perhaps for some of them, that's all they can hope for. There's another bunch who are saying, what can I do with this? How can I use this? What is the opportunity in this? I mean, somebody mentioned earlier, the Pfizer guys are jumping. Okay, that's one way. But there are other people who, in my life, for example, have banded together. Enormous collaboration, enormous inspiration. So there's that group. And then there's a third group that says, wow, now that my view of reality has been shattered, and I know it ain't going to be normal again, at least not the normal that we know. What does it say about who I am? And so I'm introducing again the word transcendence, beyond what we believe and think myself to be. So the summary goes, emotional brain, associative brain, get into a loop, create suffering. That tension, that focus of the mind is priceless. It's an opportunity of note. If you use it, how do you use it? You engage the front part of the brain. How? By asking specific questions of the experience. Don't go for the story. I don't know what happened. Tell me how you feel. Where do you feel it? What does it look like? How does it feel? What does it sound? All sensory. And Davide calls it the liminal space, I think. For me, I call it the space of trance. And in that state, the awakening that happens and the energy that is released is something that I can go on describing, has no meaning. You have to experience it, and then it'll really wow. So from that perspective, this COVID problem can be a golden opportunity.
Definitely. JR, are you there? I love to hear what you got to say.
Well, I'm just listening and absorbing, and it's fascinating being with all of you and all of your concepts and ideas, and you're broadening my perspective for sure.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. Now, one thing, Panos, I don't know if I mean the same thing when you say trance. I mean, I've been working with you. You know, we've gone through some of the things, and I think that's what you do is a specific moment when you involve all the senses into bring into the awareness. You know, bring into the light, or bringing into the into the known, or into the known, not in the sense of know how it works, but known in the sense of getting to know it. So I like that. What I mean by liminal space is really when the area in which there are no grips. So now you can talk about it and feel it, but right now I think, you know, if I don't know if I'm correct, but most people can't really touch, you know, specifically, you know. In fact, I love the specific question of the frontal lobe. I mean, that's really something that pierces through any confusion and anything, you know, and I think that's powerful. But at the same time, I think there's something there that if I talk with people, there's like an unbounded space, something like that lost the boundaries.
Yes.
And so things you were counting on, now they're not there anymore. Yes. And so that is you feel lost. I mean, in Italian there's a word says smarrimento, no? And I think that's really what I see a lot of people. They're lost, but not because they don't know where they are. They're lost because what's going on around is not really predictable, or is not doing what you think it should. And the world that you knew up until now is not the world you're going to know from now on. And that I know it's a good thing to say philosophically, because it's an opportunity. Yet people feel like lost. in the passage. And
I
I think
I want to give two references here, because earlier you said if we have something to, as reference, we can mention the name and we can type it. Okay. I want to refer everybody who's watching. There are two people that I would ask you to go and find out about on YouTube. The one guy's name is Anil Seth, S-E-T-H. He's given TED Talks. He's a researcher in the UK, in London or somewhere, I can't remember exactly, in the UK, however. And his main contention is what we're experiencing is top down. In other words, it's not you see stuff through the eyes and then you form an image. It's the other way around. An image is formed and then the eyes try to verify. So this is a very important point, because being top down, my reality and your reality will never be the same. Each one of us literally is living in a universe of our own. Most people find that like what? But this reality, this COVID thing, is forcing people to think that. For example, if I say vaccines are bad, for instance, and someone says no, vaccines are good, clearly I know that we're not on the same page. Up to that day, we kind of got along, we were colleagues there, we're making jokes, but suddenly we have an issue now. Vaccines are good, vaccines are bad. Oh, so this inner difference from one person to the next has now hit a lot of people in the face. What I believe is not happening is there's nothing in the universal culture to prompt people to look inside. They're always looking out. And if you look out, you look for someone to blame normally. You never look for solutions. It's his fault. I must catch the unvaccinated and lock them up in, I don't know, some story. And so my suggestion is to facilitate the transition. A surrogate prefrontal lobe is useful. In this case, it could be what Lincoln does, a therapist, a person, a coach, whatever word you want to use, somebody who can play the role of an awakened, enlightened, I'll use my favorite word, prefrontal lobe, so that the person gets an idea what it's like if they have someone next to them asking the questions they could be asking themselves. So for example, what do you feel? Oh, I feel this pressure on my chest, the person goes. And how big is it? Oh, I never thought of it. Well, it's this big. And what is it doing? No, it's moving like this. Oh, and what else? And what does it look in the middle? No, I don't want to go there. It's too scary. Okay, fine. Let's create a little imaginary spaceship and we're going to go there safely. Okay, I can manage that. And then boom. And as the attention is taken into the core of what seems to be the problem, resolution. And that's the bottom of the katavasi and the anavasi. This is where you get the through. Because when you transcend that moment, it's like, wait a minute, I never imagined this was possible. In that resolution, the energy that is released, I'm going to go a little bit woo-woo on you guys now, somehow, I don't know how, I can't explain it, creates connections across invisible universes. I don't know. People suddenly phone you up. Hey, I haven't spoken to you for so long. What about? Strange things happen. When this release of energy happens, magic happens. And so I'm really sorry, I'm repeating myself, but I think this is the opportunity here.
I love when you with your beer say strange things happen. I love it. I mean, you give me the picture of it. Andre, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, Panos, thank you so much for making that clarity between the emotional brain and the associative brain and the transcendence that happens in there, Lincoln, for the things that you shared about. Kind of I think a combination of both the emotional work and the somatic work of actually feeling where the pain is and allowing yourself to feel that. What's interesting is that I think we live in the greatest amount of counterfeit ever created through the pervasiveness of social media around the world, which creates, Panos, a confirmation bias. Right? If people have a picture, then they find on social media what it is that they're looking for. And, whoever is behind the social media conversation, we can have a conversation around that. But there's a counterfeit of this is the truth that is being put together. And people are wanting to find the evidence of what they're looking for without doing the work of going interpersonal. And it's amazing, in America, I would say JR and I are very aligned around the challenge of how powerful these tech companies are in their ability to choose what people see and don't see. They have become censorship. They have become, and so they are pushing these things. What's interesting, and this is what you can trust the universe and trust, you know, humanity, God, if you would, that if the counterfeit pushes hard, the awakening also happens, right? America is probably the most medicated society. Like you said, Mushai, you know, Pfizer guys are all excited. Yeah, you know, they're health companies that are not interested in your health, right? They're interested in your use of their health products. And in America, you know, it's more than 60% of the TV ads are for medication. And even this paradox is funny because you have 30 seconds of an ad to tell you the value and a minute and a half to tell you of the side effects. And the interesting thing is that people buy the first thing that was said. Oh, this is going to help your depression. And they switch off for the minute and a half that says it might cause you to commit suicide or go crazy. But hey, you know what? You're not going to feel depressed, so take the pill anyway. And what's interesting, I think, is a much greater awareness of natural ways for people to deal with things, natural medicines, plant-based things. You know, what's really interesting, if you want to see censorship in its most powerful way, try to take a look at the hashtag natural immunity, right? If you took natural immunity and you put it into Instagram or Facebook, it will take you to the CDC government and tell you about vaccines.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Right? Nowhere do they tell people to be healthy, to eat well, to take care. You know, and I think in Africa, I grew up in South Africa, I think in learning from many traditions, there are things that are from cultures that they learned about plant-based things, different things. The Koreans have a lot of good ways of dealing with health. So as the count, in my mind, as the visual counterfeit predictable narrative is coming, there is also awakening. The key, or an enlightenment, if you would, as you said, Panos, but enlightenment cannot come as a confirmation. Enlightenment can only come if you do the work of going through the transcendence. And so the challenge is that even some enlightened people are trying to enlighten others through the means of the counterfeit, and it can't work. You can't inform people or educate people unless they've, not unless, but without them actually going through the transcendence of themselves. And so, you know, I think this is the paradox, is that, you know, we have this opportunity for people to move from the subject to the object. The vehicles, the guides, the elders, the prophets, the way makers are few to help people through that. And those that are being censored and being marginalized. And so it needs to come through community and an uprising like that, in my mind.
I think one of the challenges and one of the thinkings I've had is our herd mentality as humans. And I think I'm not jinxing the conversation or the recording, but I suspect it's not gonna break the internet. Huh? Not many people are going to be here watching and engaging with this conversation. Maybe half the audience has already been lost. You know, it's just like
unless Davide brings some naked women, then we're in the money. Right?
Then we're in the money, exactly.
My God.
Yes. So, and you guys, I don't know if you've been to the one of our great sites in Kenya is the Masai Mara. We have the Wildebeest Migration. It just ended. It's in August and September. And these wildebeest, terribly ugly animals, they say they were made with the leftovers after God had made creation, because they just look so weird. So they cross over from, it's the Tanzanian side, the Serengeti. I'm sure the animals don't know they're in another country. And they walk up to the Mara Triangle where they actually give birth and feed. Usually it's a grass that takes them up and then so on. But they cross these rivers, the Mara River. And the crocodiles, if you watch some videos, crocodiles are there and everything. But last year we got a chance to see these migrations. COVID has got its uses. There were no tourists, so it was very cheap. We could all go as Kenyans and see this. And it's fascinating, actually, how these animals cross. Because one thing, the wildebeest, the herd has no leader. So, you know, you can never point out and say who was the leader of the herd. There's none. But they walk, and then at some point they sit. You know, they get tired. They just sit. And I remember us watching them in one field, and they were coming up, and it was almost like a church, actually, because they were seated on a big field, like on a hillside, and then they would all walk towards this narrow exit. It's a field. There is no exit, but you know, they would go to this narrow spot and all funnel themselves in there, and then they would walk in a line. And then at a certain point on the line, they would start like jogging. First they would walk, and then they would start jogging. And there was nobody telling them to do it or whatever, but they do this. And the most fascinating is when they cross the river, because everybody wants to watch it. So the whole day, the tourists, you're driving around waiting to see whether they're going to cross. And they're like, that herd looks like it's going to cross. It's not going to cross. And you keep going back. But they come up to the river. They look across. And, you know, they make a lot of noise. And everybody's like, okay, are they going to cross? Are they not going to cross? Are they going to cross? And then suddenly one jumps or two jumps, maybe it falls in, who knows, it maybe somebody pushed it. And then all of them just start crossing. And it doesn't matter, there could be a crocodile there, there could be a lion on the other side, they just start crossing. And they all go across to the other side. And then sometimes you find them, the next day they cross back. And you're like, what was the point? What were you looking for on the other side? But when I saw that, I thought, it's so close to our human nature, even on these things. And I think it applies across the board. So and you know, I was thinking about iPhones. I don't know how many of you guys have iPhones. I know Davide is an iPhone fan, but it's like, why do you have an iPhone? You know, why are we dressed? Or your fancy headphones, right? In a certain style. We're buying fashion because other people have fashion. That's what it is. So we do what other people do. So even as Andre was talking about the treatments, and I think, okay, we have a slightly different view in Africa. In Kenya, say when the white, let's call it Western medicine came to Africa, there was a big fight about whether you took your children to this modern hospital, to the doctor, because it's just like, we don't touch that. There's what we do, you know. So, and of course, antibiotics and everything did a big changeover in our countries, in our societies, even child survival and all that, child mortality. So it was a big help in that sense. But we are always looking for a crowd in a sense, and not really wanting to think too much. And sometimes it's necessary because, you know, if I want to buy a car today and I'm not an engineer, I really don't want to know the nuts and bolts of the car and the tires, and I just want to know it looks like a nice car. It moves, it's within my price range, and you know, I'm not going to get too detailed around that because there are some things I can't know everything, and some things I'm just going to follow the crowd. So that's what I'm following. But then the question is that those crowds, sometimes there are powers, there are systems that are defining those things, and those systems have results in like Andrew was talking about medication. So like the Americans being over-medicated, the other side of it is it's actually the Americans are unhealthy. It's not the medicine that's the problem. It's like, how do you get so unhealthy so that you need all these medicines? And, you know, I'm on the other side of pharmaceuticals. I'm in veterinary pharmaceuticals. But you get to see those things is that people they've made themselves so unhealthy that they need all these treatments. And the treatments, again, is the magic pill. It's always take this pill and you will lose weight. Okay, take this pill and your skin will be. So it's the pills with the promises of all these good things. But my point there is, and I think I put it also as a question, is this the herd mentality? And it goes both ways. And some people, they want to be, in fact, they were saying, like in the wildebeest, they don't know how the herds form, because even the animals change herd. The herd split up, they merge, they do all this kind of thing. So at some point, I'm like, I want to follow those guys. And then the other time is I want to follow those guys. And again, was it Andre or Panos who said that I think you are mentioning about Anil, is that I follow the guy not because of the rationale, but because I've seen the image already. I want to follow him. So because he looks like me or he thinks like me. And that's the one I want to follow, but not because there was we think we thought through it, but we really did. Thanks.
Very good.
If you want to follow that route, I would recommend another reference. The guy's name is Benjamin Libert. I don't know if you heard of him. Libet, Benjamin Libert. His work in the 60s and the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on the dates, he measured inside people's brains, like real-time measurements in a brain, right? And there were reasons why the brain skull was open and so on. Anyway, he showed that in short time frames, in other words, when people don't have time to think, there's no free will. What you think is a decision. If you look at the neurological structures, they've been working, in case of Libert, he managed to clock, let's say, 300 milliseconds, which is a lot for brain stuff. Later on, with fMRI and other technologies, people are clocking minutes, things happening. So that eventually, when it comes to conscious awareness, the person says, well, I'd really like an apple now. Meantime, if you track the processes in the brain, so according to them, and I'm not going to go into an argument whether I agree or disagree, I'm just sharing it with you, the idea of free will in short time frames is a myth. If you have time to reflect, well, we can discuss. And then there's a religious view. And then the last thing I want to say, I'm going to leave free will hanging. The idea of randomness is a very interesting thing. So in other words, in terms of your description, Mushai, in terms of this herd moving in a random way, that is a very interesting phenomenon. And again, I don't know if we have time to look at it now. So the consequences of random behavior, that is really something worth not now exploring. So, and another, I'm going to give you one more reference, sorry. This is a guy from UCT, the university up the road from where I stay, Mark Solms, S-O-L-M-S, Mark Solms, S-O-L-M-S. He did a wonderful bit of work recently to show that consciousness does not reside in the higher brain functions. And I mean, this is ridiculous stuff. He's got x-rays of people without a brain. The brain's missing, gone. And the person is still functioning. And I shouldn't be laughing, but I can't help myself. And he's got one, right here in the brainstem, three cubic millimeters of matter. If you remove that, boof, consciousness goes. What I'm trying to say by that is we give a lot of value, we overvalue the ideas of thinking and individuality, where actually these are on the periphery. In the depth of the person, those things are on the surface. There's layers and layers and layers way below that. And he's got the video and he's got the slides. It's worth looking. So Mark Solms, Anil Seth, and Benjamin Libert, very interesting guys to look at.
Yeah, very good. Lots of stuff. Now, so very, we're approaching the end of the call, and I was wondering, if we could, go on the phase of what's the takeaway that we can get, and what's the takeaway that we would like, to leave to the others. I think I'd like to go around and look at that, because there's a lot in this. We could explore things for hours and hours and hours, but we got to get to the end of the call, and I think it's really powerful what's going on, and I don't want to just live it like that. I like for you guys to go around and say, what's the takeaway from you, and what would be the takeaway for us from you?
I'll go. Firstly, I want to thank everybody on the panel. What an incredible journey this conversation has been. Like you said, Lincoln, it's not so easy to stay in Zoom calls all the time. There's a cognitive dissonance that happens. And so I've been on 3 hours before this, and I've got 3 hours after this. So
wow,
may the force be with me. But this has been a fascinating journey into, I think there's actually been a couple of moments on transcendence for myself, right? I would say I really appreciate the conversation around the herd and what's the herd doing. I think, Mushai, that was a really powerful frame for me. Lincoln, thank you for bringing to attention the idea of stopping and giving people a moment to experience, express, and then adding to that, Panos, the idea of the disassociation that happens through the emotional and the associated brain. Panos, I could listen to you for hours, but then I would have serious cognitive dissonance. So I might take moments, but it's such a richness in the conversation for me. So for me, I feel like I have work to do and the invitation here has not been a cognitive invitation to go think about this, but really to have my own experience of subject object, right? And deliberately going out of my thinking of katabasis, anabasis into some of this journey myself. And so it's been comforting to hear you as an encouragement into a journey for myself. So thank you for that. What do I leave you with? Let's go through the portal together. Let's go together.
I like that. Love that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity, Davide. So great to see you, JR. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more. I'm going to Belize in a month or so, and I'd love your thoughts on that. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
So let me take this opportunity also to thank everybody in the panel, viewers, if they're there listening to our process. I think it's an excellent opportunity. Thank you, Davide, for organizing this. Thank you, Yang, for your contribution. Mushai, thanks for your invitation and bringing me to this gang. Henry, I think it's been very exciting for me. I think this has been therapeutic, I would say that. Not only because it's really helping, it's helped my thinking to go a little deeper, and probably trying to tease out the possibilities that we have given this global crisis. I think that anybody hooks into that when they're in a crisis. Anybody looks for something. What can I hold on as we go through the tunnel? I like the examples that have been given, the symbolism. In Africa here, symbolism is very, very important. In fact, we already started writing and talking this stuff very recently. And something has come up here, I think I need to mention it, about the brain. Through some of the work, I've realized that actually people get to evaluate crises from their own culture, from the way they know things. For example, there's a time depression, and I think we are doing this presentation somewhere in California some years back. A neurologist had taken slides and pictures of people who had depression. And exactly this part was a bit smaller for people who had depression. So they would not think as people who do not have. In my research here in Africa, in my own community, the term for depression was, Mushai would get this, kohinyere kameshiria, meaning squeeze the brain. And that was amazing for me. The brain was squeezed. But for the American, they actually could show this in a scan, neurologists, and it was amazing. So that tells me, and this is what has come out, and this could be probably one takeaway, that human beings are actually the same. They experience things the same way, but they manifest differently. So this crisis, this global crisis, I think the best thing that has ever happened in the world, that it enables us to sit here and get these ideas and process and think, what is it? What are the possibilities? Lastly, I think, as somebody has mentioned, I think it's high time, probably, we started exploring how life can be based on nature's fundamental laws that create balance at mind, spirit, and body across the world. And it is possible for everyone out there to be able to create a space where they can do their own trust. They go into that space, find out who they are, and then get into the heart so that we can move in the same direction. So thank you very much. And this needs to continue, so that not only for ourselves, but also for people out there to start thinking before they used to say outside the box. Probably this would be the time. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think you asked Davide, what is our takeaway? And I think Lincoln just expressed my takeaway is how important it is to think outside the box. And I think here in the US, it's ironic, we're right in the middle of harvest. I live on a vineyard and we have a winery, and we're in the middle of harvest right now, which is a busy, busy time and a lot of activity. And it's also an exciting time. New things, new wines are happening. But with the situation in the nationwide is, someone talked about the division and how politicians tend to try to emphasize the division. And it's so easy to get caught up in that. And what I heard today was, wait a minute, it's probably not going to go back to the way it was before. So that's a false hope. And instead of concentrating on that or lamenting that, why don't we look at what could be and what is going to become, and really see the excitement and the possibilities of what is going on. And in some ways, I think other aspects of my life have been that way. And harvest is an example of that. We didn't stop the harvest or stop making new wine or anything because of the political situation. And so I think it's helped me a lot today to hear all of you, to hear your perspective, and to see that there's life beyond this crisis. Thank you. Thank you for your input.
Yeah, I think I couldn't have put it better than JR in how he put it about what the opportunity is. And I think that whole initiation, what did you guys call it? Catharsis and...
What's the name of that?
Catharsis.
Catabasis and anabasis.
And anabasis, yeah.
Basis, catabasis and anabasis.
And like Lincoln told you, we do, yeah, anabasis, yeah. We have our own, what do you call them? Initiation rites and that kind of thing, which went through for people. So that's an important part. And I think one of the other things that comes out of that is, and we didn't talk too much about, is community. And, how important it is, like we say, even me, thoroughly enjoying the conversation, could do this for many more hours, etc. But it's community. It's this space where people can have a conversation and open up. And I think also importantly is to be human about it and to be human with each other. And almost humanize each other. So that gives us opportunity to share and have conversation. And that's what we are losing in some sense. One of the links I'll send you, Davide, is Charles Eisenstein. I don't know if you guys have come across him. He's one of the big thinkers. And he wrote a series I was looking through recently on COVID, and he's looked at it from they call it mimetic theory. That's from René Girard. And he just talks about how we as societies, we copy each other. So it's a little bit related to the herd mentality. But when we start competing, we then get violent with each other. And then to kind of remove the violence, we need to find a scapegoat. We need to find somebody to blame. And if it's a person, we have to dehumanize them. There's somebody we need to dehumanize and send away. So, and I think that is part of our stories, that now people vaccinated, they dehumanize people who don't want to be vaccinated, and vice versa. So because the people who don't want to be vaccinated, they're like, these guys are trying to control us. They're trying to, they're going to put chips in us and manage it, or even if they're just like, why are they controlling my life? But it's some sort of dehumanizing with each other. But how do we come together as community? Not because we agree. And it's important to say that community is not the place we agree, but community is the place we can talk and hear each other and say, like, I like the neuroscience that actually we are seeing different things, and maybe we can just come and talk and say, hey, Davide, what do you see? And that was interesting. That was the title of this. What do you see? And everybody can bring what they see, and it's okay, it's valid. So that building of community is useful. And the last bit, I think I really love what JR was saying, is that we can still harvest the grapes. We can still live in our lives and make beauty and new things without getting too concerned with the things of the world. We are like, how many people are getting vaccinated every day? That may not be our issue. It's what about the people I'm sitting next to? Or even Zooming with, am I talking with them and reaching out to them and connecting with them one way or another? So thanks, David. It's been a great conversation. Loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Great pleasure. Panos.
Man, okay, there's so many possibilities here. I don't know where to. Okay, so I'm going to cut it down. Right?
You are three people in one. Do you know that, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's called Poxibilita. Poxibilita, that's the name.
Me, myself, and I
Yes.
want to say the following. The first opportunity of this, I don't know if it's a crisis, this situation, right, is that look at us. I mean, Davide, I've physically met. The rest of you, I haven't. Different color skin, different look, different background, different culture, whatever you want to say. Here we are. So the first thing I want to point out is just the six of us as we are together, there's something that we have in common. Very difficult to point out. It's like you can't put your finger exactly. Not the nose, it's not this, it's not. It's a quality. So what I've seen, and you've mentioned it also, I'm repeating it, is people finding themselves getting into community in different layers with what they believe to be people like themselves. This so far seems to manifest in division. I'm suggesting the opportunity exists to step across through this fear, okay, to find the common elements. This is an opportunity. Whether we're going to take it, God knows. I mean, here we are. I hope we are some sort of an example. Davide and I know from experience, we've done this for the last year and a half. Collaboration is magic. You can't believe the new things that emerge, because he will say something, I'll think of it differently, I'll say something, his mind will go someplace. It's just amazing. And thank goodness for technology, strangely enough. So the situation has forced us, in a way, to communicate across cultures, across continents, across time zones, across everything. And here we are. So that's a great take home for me. Yeah. The other side is the situation is also, at least I'm speaking for myself, maybe you guys share that, I don't know, is it's really forcing me to ask the question, my goodness, when I was born, nobody gave me a user's manual. All the things that I know, I had to dig up myself. learn, study, spend time with people, do apprenticeships, practice, whatever it is, to figure out how the damn thing works. My brother from another mother, Yagi Vasudev, goes under the pseudonym Sadhguru. He says, nobody gave us the human, what's his name, honors manual. And so my inspiration is to explore and demonstrate, not just talk about, but do the doing of how this thing works, so that people at least can have an opportunity to be responsible for their own experience. Yeah. And so, and by the way, I might be a little bit weird here. I'd rather do this for free if I can. You know, if an opportunity arises, for me, this is a good way to go, especially under these conditions. So the summary of this meeting for me is to be able to say, you know what, community is happening in different strata, in different ways, which is phenomenal. It's wonderful. The opportunity for new discoveries is being forced on us. I mean, you have no idea what is in a single cell. If you just Google cell and see what's inside, it will blow your mind. And because of COVID, we have to think in terms of cellular terms. A year ago, a cell means nothing. Suddenly, everybody's talking, you know, mitochondria and mRNA and the nucleus and the ribosomes. What? So that level of expansion, I think it's phenomenal. And I don't know if this is a, you know, somebody said, you know, we're going to release this virus and change humanity, or we're going to release this virus and make billions. I'm not sure how it went. But I think it's an opportunity, and thank you so much for sharing the space and exchanging ideas and sharing your experiences, because really this is what makes the difference, sharing one's experience as best as we can. And Davide, thanks for putting it together, man.
Oh, I mean, for me, and first of all, I don't only thank you, but I feel thankful to have you in my life. And I'm not kidding you. This might sound like this guy plays the violin, and I'm not playing the violin here. I'm just saying, it's so much of a beauty to get you here. And I was listening to all of you, and there's so much of the richness. I mean, we're not dying. At least we don't look like we're dying. We're going through the pain. We're willing to go through it. I mean, at least I see people willing to go through it. Don't know what's going to happen. Yet we're here, you know, the gates are there. Let's go to the gate and let's see what's going to happen. And the only way to the gate, I would say, just to close this meeting, is true. Like, you know, somebody used to say, the only way to go on the other side is true. And I think this time also, you know, the only way to go somewhere is to go through this situation. That's really what touched my heart when you guys talked about this Greek thing and the gate. For me, if I would synthesize this call, I see this long tunnel to the gate that we're going through, and we're all in the tunnel at this point in time, and we're struggling to move forward, but nobody wants to stop. And I think my desire is that we won't stop, and we will lead the new world, not just accept the new world. Because see, the world needs leaders, and this tunnel produces leaders. And I believe it's so long that the leaders don't rise with their full potential and make a stand. And I don't think I want to make a stand against anybody, but I think the time has come in which, you know, the leaders are called to take a stand. And I think I've been in this call for 2 hours with great leaders that I would follow anywhere in the battle. And I will do that. And I hope I will do that if it's needed, or I hope we will get a drink and have fun. Now, the last thing I want to say, next time, if there is a next time, I love to have some women also, because you said we're old men, and that's really kind of limiting. Huh? We're just, you know, on one side. I mean, I love the inclusion to include some more. So, you know, if you do something next time, I'll make sure that we get some other perspectives also in it. So now, thanking all of you for your time, I mean, for your willingness to go deep in this conversation. I'm so blessed by it. I don't know anything else to say, but thank you. And you know, we'll see each other. We'll see each other soon. All right?
JR, we want some wine, right? You're not getting away with it.
We might see each other in California.
Definitely.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.